Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with Endtime Ministries. Thank you for joining me on Thursday's edition of End of the Age. Now, I'm going to start off talking about the peace agreement in the Middle East from a little different angle, probably than you've heard about it. And if I have time, I'm going to get off into some of the new reports of China's social credit system that they're trying to implement, which could be precursors to the mark of the beast. I mean, it sure looks like it. But most of you know that Netanyahu won the election in Israel. I mean, some of the votes are still coming in, but he's got the biggest majority of them. So he's been declared the prime minister, his fifth term, and so now they say that the Trump administration's peace deal is going to be rolled out. Now, I've seen reports that the Trump administration is going to present its peace plan, of course, the deal of the century, as early as this month. And then I've seen it on May 15th, and I've seen it mid-June. And, I mean, there's so many reports. So, at this point, we're not sure when it's going to be presented, but every major news source across the planet is talking about it because it's big. And what I want to do today, just for a moment, is step back and look at the big picture. What's really going on? Because we can get caught up in all the details, and some of the big picture stuff would just sweep us by. We wouldn't really understand what's going on with this peace agreement. I mean, you understand that when this peace agreement is signed, it starts the final 7 years. Now, we've said that many times on the program, final 7 years. Some people know what the final 7 years are, some don't. But it's the final 7 years just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Daniel 9:27. I get emails all the time. People say, well, where's the final 7 years mentioned in the Bible? And we've been talking about it for Irvin Baxter's been teaching it for 30 plus years now. Daniel 9:27. The entire prophecy is Daniel 9:24 through 27. But the specific 7 years, the last 7 years of Daniel's 70 weeks is Daniel 9:27. It prophesies that the Antichrist, when it says he will confirm a covenant with many, it's the Antichrist, it's referring to him. And that he will confirm a covenant with many for a final 7 year period. And that accord will be the confirmation of God's covenant with Abraham that Israel would always have a homeland in the promised land. It's Genesis 15:18. Now, they have been exiled. They were exiled once when they went into Babylonian captivity. Then they came right back to the same place that God promised Abraham. Then they were exiled a second time in 70 A.D. when they were scattered across the planet, but yet they came back in 1947, 1948, declared their independence in 1948, and they've been a nation. So that land was promised to them by God, and they always came back there after both of their exiles. And when we see this prophesied agreement, now this is very important. When we see the prophesied agreement, then we will know. Now, it's got all the characteristics. We've mentioned them many times on the radio and television in our magazine. But once that peace agreement is signed, then you can know assuredly that the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ have begun. Now, I want to let that sink in for a moment because I've talked to people on the phone and been in email correspondence with people all over the world. And they just don't get the concept. The 7 years doesn't sink in. Because, a lot of people say, well, after the rapture, after the second coming, I'm going to live on to the millennium and I'll take that chance and things like that. But we don't know who gets to live on in the millennium. Only God knows that. So at the end, could it be people under the age of accountability, 19 years old and down? We don't know for sure. So you can't take a chance on that. At the time of the rapture and the second coming, it's one simultaneous event. That's when the Battle of Armageddon is fought. That's the end of this age. And everybody that is, we know, above the age of accountability, you need to be prepared to go in the rapture. And that's the most important thing. So a lot of things happen during that final 7 years, culminating at the rapture and the second coming of Jesus Christ. And so I want to let the 7 years sink in. I was talking to some people here at Endtime in our offices, and I said, you do realize that, I mean, we're staring at the 7 years right now, just ahead of us. If they were to get a peace agreement signed, and it's the peace agreement, we'd start the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon.
We've seen Bible prophecy fulfilled like never before. From the halls of the United Nations to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, End Time Ministries continues to reveal the Bible prophecy in the news headlines around the world every day. Whether it's through our broadcast or online at our Jerusalem Prophecy College, your gifts enable us to put vital materials in the hands of those who need it most. Because of you, we continue to replace fear with faith in the hearts of Christians around the world. We will continue to see prophecy come to pass at an even swifter pace. We need your support. Your donation of any amount enables us to continue to broadcast and be a voice in the ever-growing censored media. To become a partner or give a one-time gift, visit endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME right now. That's 800-363-8463. Go online now. Visit endtime.com.
Have you had a longing to visit the cities where Jesus healed, ministered, and taught every day? Judy and I would like to invite you to travel to the wonderful land of Israel. Experience the Word of God in vivid color while walking down the roads of the Holy Land with us.
When you are ready to experience Israel, we recommend you travel with Endtime Ministries. You will not only experience historical and present-day Israel, you will also learn about the prophesied future to come. It's as if we traveled back in time to visit a different era and discovered ourselves in an ancient time. The tour is very well organized, the accommodations are first class, and the food is delicious. If you have ever had a desire to visit Israel, there is no better time than now. Ann from Colorado.
To sign up to receive your Experience Israel 2019 packet, call Adrian or Jana at 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com. We can't wait to experience Israel with you.
So I'm going to get off back into the peace agreement here in just a moment and let you know what Jared Kushner and Jason Greenblatt and them have been doing. But before I do, I want to announce a prophecy conference that Irvin, Baxter, and myself and our wives will be at in Plymouth, Michigan this weekend. If you're anywhere on the Plymouth, Michigan area, Irvin, Baxter, and myself will be there. That's this coming Saturday, April 13th at 6 p.m., He's going to be teaching Satan's end time plan revealed. It's a new lesson. And then on Sunday morning at the same place, Plymouth, Michigan, he's going to be doing Breaking Prophetic Fulfillments with a question and answer session following. That's Sunday, April 14th at 10:30 a.m. And that's going to be held at the at 1100 West Ann Arbor Trail, the Solid Rock Church, 1100 West Ann Arbor Trail in Plymouth, Michigan. So if you need more information, go to endtime.com, go into the events section and then conferences, and all the information is there. But join us there in Plymouth, Michigan this weekend. Should be a good time. The Satan's end time plan is a really, really good lesson. It's a real eye-opener. So again, now that Israel elections are passed, the Trump administration is set to present their Israeli-Palestinian peace plan, and they're very excited to do that. It's called the Deal of the Century, and they're going to release it very soon now. Well, back in February, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Benjamin Netanyahu and Kushner briefed participants at a security conference in Warsaw, Poland. Many of you remember that, about the anticipated plan, but they would not go into details for fear that it would leak. And a diplomat who watched Kushner's presentation quoted him as saying that the Trump administration had given him the Israeli-Palestinian file to give the long, elusive goal, of a peace agreement a shot. And despite the long odds, he said that he believed that, this is very important, privately, those individuals are much more flexible than their public positions. So these different leaders will stand up and say, well, we're not going to sign a peace agreement. We're not going to have anything to do with it. We don't support it. But in private, they're much more flexible. It's called politics, everybody. They're much more flexible and willing to negotiate when they get them back in private meeting rooms and this, that, and the other, rather than when you get on television and everything, you're worried about what the people are going to think at that point. So I'm going to come at this from a little different angle than you may have heard it, because I've been, Irvin, Baxter, myself, we've been really watching this. And Axios reported that Netanyahu owes Trump a lot, and he does. And he might need to pay the president back soon if the White House finally releases its often discussed peace plan. Many people are questioning everything that Donald Trump has done for Israel and for Netanyahu personally since he got in office. Is he going to call back those favors and say, hey, look at all I've done for you. Now, I need you to do this one thing for me, and that would be the peace plan. A lot of people are speculating that. The Washington Examiner actually wrote an article, and they said, hey, Netanyahu, are you going to return Trump's favors? On Tuesday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu secured a 5th term as Israeli Prime Minister. A master of coalition building and a political compromise, Netanyahu earned himself a significant chapter in Israel's history. And no one should forget, though, that President Trump played a significant role in Netanyahu's victory. Just in time for the election, Donald Trump handed Netanyahu major policy victories that he was able to sell to the people of Israel. And that includes, and I'm going to get into several of them in great detail here in a moment, but that includes the move of the U.S. Embassy to Tel Aviv, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, Trump's support for Israel's claim over the sovereignty of the Golan Heights, the pushing of the Sunni monarchies to more open support of Israel interest, and this will play into the peace agreement, and his generous reinforcement of U.S. aid to the Israeli military. I mean, Donald Trump has handed Netanyahu a lot. And we're great supporters of Israel, so I'm happy that he did that. But in Trump, Israel has found its greatest presidential ally. And now, the article is saying, it's time for Netanyahu to prove himself the ally Trump needs in advancing Trump's Middle East peace plan. You see where I'm coming from today? You know, did Netanyahu really think all of those political favors would come with no strings attached? I mean, Donald Trump wrote The Art of the Deal. He knows how to negotiate, get things done, give people a little bit, but in return, I'm going to expect something on the back end. And as for Trump's, long brewing plan to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, an agreement with appropriate concessions on all sides, the article is saying, would eliminate a driver of Islamic extremist propaganda, terrorist recruitment, and resentment in the Muslim world. Now, while the role of the conflict in fueling Islamic terrorism is often exaggerated, issues of poverty, they exaggerate them. Issues of poverty, political failure, ideologically extreme education are far more important. The conflict does matter at the margin. And true, we needn't fool ourselves. Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other groups in Gaza are likely going to oppose the deal no matter what the terms are. And Trump should be ready to punish them if they act, now this is the article, punish them if they act against his proposal. Still, Netanyahu owes it to Trump. Now this is this article. Netanyahu owes it to Trump and himself to keep an open mind about any proposed peace plan and to signal a willingness to make concessions under the right circumstances. Again, a lot of this stuff that Donald Trump has done for Netanyahu in Israel, that's going to come into play when we come down to negotiations. And Netanyahu wants to stick on something, and Donald Trump says, look at all we've done. I need you to move on this certain issue. And the article goes on to say these circumstances might entail a commitment by the Sunni Arab monarchies in Egypt to get the Palestinians to the table in good faith, which is what Trump is relying on, and I'll get to some of that here in a moment in detail. But we don't, for example, expect Netanyahu to risk his government unilaterally. Netanyahu's willingness to deal would send an important signal to future U.S. administrations. Former President Barack Obama's goal of creating daylight between the U.S. and Israel so that the U.S. could be seen as a more honest broker among the Arabs, that backfired. Obama's hostility towards Israel caused Netanyahu to dig his heels in, which in turn took the pressure off of the Palestinians to engage, because everybody saw it as Netanyahu's problem, not theirs. And Trump, on the other hand, he's shown himself a great friend of Israel. You're going to see how great in a moment. I'm going to give a list of a lot of things that he's done. And by treating the Trump proposal seriously, Netanyahu can demonstrate that to future American presidents can get further by fostering closer ties and creating more trust between the U.S. and Israel than creating a huge gap like the Obama administration did, because Netanyahu is not going to dig his heels in so much. And for now, a serious engagement will put pressure on the Palestinians and the Arab states to make a deal. If they reject a reasonable offer out of hand, then they will have to swallow the blame and the consequences for that. So you see the dynamics going on behind the scene here. There's much more than previous administrations have done. Donald Trump came along and said, hey, what they did not work. We've got to come at it from a whole new approach. We need a regional agreement, not just bringing the Palestinians and Israelis and dragging them by the nose and making them sign an agreement. He said that's not going to happen. It never has happened. It's not going to happen now. So he said, I need to get some leverage over the Israelis, which I don't know if he necessarily done that on purpose, but at the end of the day, it's what's happened. And then he wants to get the Sunni Arab nations that have influence over the Palestinians to bring them in. So these two parties can't fall back on anything. They've got to negotiate because there's huge things at stake here. So, what are some of the favors and commitments that President Trump has presented to Israel? Because once you understand how this thing is kind of set up from the beginning, over 2 years ago now, you can kind of see what Donald Trump has been doing. Now, again, every one of these, did he do them looking forward to a peace agreement and expecting something back from Netanyahu? I mean, I don't know what's in the mind of Donald Trump, but if you stand outside of it and look at it, you can see that Donald Trump is going to have huge influence over Netanyahu when it comes to this future peace agreement, those negotiations. So what are some of the commitments and the favors that President Trump has done for Israel? Well, number one, he recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And I want to go through some of these because I want you to feel the gravity of this situation. Because we can talk about it and slide over things, and we get off the radio and you think, well, that was cool, sounded neat, but let's go on to the next subject. But these are huge developments. Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Many of the other ones said they would do it, but they never did. Donald Trump did it, and Israel and Netanyahu was watching him every step of the way. So let me give some of the gravity to the situation here. Way back on November 29th, 1947, the United Nations voted to create the nation of Israel and the nation of Palestine. And they envisioned Jerusalem as an international city at that point. God doesn't view it that way. The international community does. And the Israelis accepted this partition, the little section they were given, but the Arabs rejected it. And Israel declared independence on May 14th, 1948, and on May 15th, the next day, 5 Arab nations launched a war against the little nation of Israel, igniting the War of Independence. Well, of course, when the Armistice Treaty was signed in 1949, Israel controlled more land than what the United Nations had given them in their original partition. But they won the battle. And then it lasted like that all the way till 1967. And then in 1967, Israel was invaded again by an army of Arab states led by Egypt. Well, Israel defeated all the neighbors who fought against her in that's what was called the 6-Day War. And they gained substantial territory, including the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and the Sinai Peninsula. I mean, way down into Egypt, and most importantly, the Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. Now, on July 30, 1980, Israel's Knesset passed the Basic Law, Jerusalem, capital of Israel. Well, that law states that Jerusalem is the complete and united capital of Israel. And throughout all of this, the international community had not changed its stance that Jerusalem should be an international city and therefore never recognized the Jerusalem law. Well, then came Resolution 2334 by the Obama administration. You know, why not make it official with the backing of the United States, right? I mean, on December 23rd, 2016, after President Trump had been elected, but it was in between from the time he got elected and the time he took office, December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, 2016, the Obama administration abstained from voting on the UN Security Council Resolution 2334, allowing it to become international law. And item number 1 of that Security Council resolution clearly states that Israel's presence in East Jerusalem, is where the Temple Mount is located, is illegal and is a flagrant violation of international law. And it said it reaffirms the establishment by Israel of settlements in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967. Now, the United States should have vetoed that, but the Obama administration let it go, including East Jerusalem, and that it has no validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the achievement of the two-state solution and a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. So this is the mindset of the international community as we speak. And it's against the eastern section of the city of Jerusalem. They believe the future of Jerusalem must only be negotiated by Palestinians and Israelis sitting side by side in direct negotiations. And that's why Donald Trump's announcement to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital was such a shock to many, but we were doing cartwheels because that's what should happen, because Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. God made it that thousands of years ago. He said many times, almost 40 times in the Old Testament, I will put my name there. So I'm going to go with God on this one, and on everything, but not just this one. But on December 6th, 2017, Trump stated, therefore, I have determined that it's time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. While previous presidents have made the major campaign promise, they never delivered. Today, I'm delivering. I've judged this course of action to be in the best interest of the United States of America and the pursuit of peace between Israel and the Palestinians. This is a long overdue step to advance the peace process and to work towards a lasting agreement. Israel is a sovereign nation with the right, like every other sovereign nation, to determine its own capital. Acknowledging this is a fact, is a necessary condition for achieving peace. And through all of these years, presidents representing the United States have declined to officially recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. In fact, we've declined to acknowledge that any Israel capital at all. But today, Donald Trump finally acknowledged the obvious, that Jerusalem was Israel's capital. And it's nothing more than or less than a recognition of reality. Donald Trump said. He said it's also the right thing to do. It's something that has to be done. That's why, consistent with the Jerusalem Embassy Act, he originally recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, and then he said, I'm also directing the State Department to begin preparation to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and that will immediately begin the process of hiring architects, engineers, planners, so that a new embassy, when completed, will be a magnificent tribute to peace. So that's you feel the weight of what Donald Trump did when he said, in the face of the international community and this world government, I'm going to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Netanyahu watched it, and the people of Israel watched it. And it was a huge success for Israel that Donald Trump gave them. But at the end of the day, does it come with no strings attached? Only time will tell.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter. This book by Irvin's grandson provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your relationship with God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at Endtime will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Get your book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
If ever people needed to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for Endtime magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will impact your life. Endtime has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that Endtime magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and lead them in doctors' offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine has done in many lives. Call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 and get your subscription today.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
If it were just that one move alone, where Trump would recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, that would be a huge gift from the United States to Israel, that Donald Trump could have many strings attached to it, and when it came time to get a peace agreement negotiated, Donald Trump could say, look, I recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital now, and also he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. And when you look at that, the gravity of that situation, in the face of the international community, Donald Trump says, I don't care what the international community says, I'm going to recognize Jerusalem and I'm going to move our embassy there. When it came peace agreement time, which Donald Trump's trying to get done, he would have a huge leverage bar on Benjamin Netanyahu. But that's not all he did. If it was just that would be big. But he also withdrew from UNESCO because of its anti-Israel bias, and letting the whole world know, if he hadn't already, from the Jerusalem move, that the United States would stand with Israel against the United Nations, the international community, which of course all of this is prophetic. Everything I'm saying right now is the ongoing fulfillment of Bible prophecy. But with Trump's withdrawal from UNESCO because of their anti-Israel bias, very, very important. And again, Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu are watching all this. So you say, well, what's UNESCO? Well, UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And it's probably best known for its World Heritage Program to protect cultural sites and traditions around the world, while it advocates humanitarian efforts on the environment, education, and science. And for decades, UNESCO has undertaken the task of recognizing the most significant sites in the world, all over the world, as part of their famed World Heritage Site program. However, over time, like most of the United Nations organizations, UNESCO became an anti-Israel entity. You say, well, why in the world would they do that? Well, because Satan is behind the goal to establish a world government in the earth right now. The Bible says in Revelation 13:2 that the dragon gave it its seat, its power, its great authority. So the efforts, the United Nations, the seat of world government in the earth today, Satan is behind that. So you don't have to wonder why they're anti-Israel. You say, no, they're not anti-Israel because of that. They're anti-Israel because of all the Arab nations. I'm telling you scripturally, we can prove that the United Nations and the international community is against Israel because of Satan. Satan has set the whole thing up. He's got entities in there that are anti-Israel. It's the way he's pulling this thing off. So the UNESCO is anti-Israel, and thankfully Donald Trump's come along and said, we're going to pull out of that. So what happened? Well, in 2011, the U.S. stopped funding UNESCO after it voted to include Palestine as a member. Palestine's not even a nation, everybody. And October 13th, 2016, Israel's prime minister announced that he said today UNESCO adopted its second decision this year denying Jewish people's connection to the Temple Mount. So, I mean, if you know your Bible at all, that Temple Mount belongs to the Jews. Now, there are people that would argue that to the end of the day, but the Temple Mount, God gave them that. The Temple Mount is the same place where God told Abraham to go sacrifice Isaac, where David bought the threshing floor of Arana. It's the Temple Mount. And Netanyahu was saying that the UNESCO has made the decision to deny them. And so on May 2nd, and it's been their holiest site for 3,000 years. UNESCO said, no, that's the Palestinians. On May 2nd, 2017, UNESCO passed a new resolution referring throughout that document to Israel as the occupying power in Jerusalem. And it indicated that it has no legal or historical ties to any part of the city. Jerusalem. We're talking about Jerusalem here. God gave them that. God chose Mount Moriah for them. And then you have the Cave of the Patriarchs. Now, this is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. On July 7th, 2017, UNESCO determined that the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron is a Palestinian heritage site, and meaning that it wasn't a Jewish site, even though, listen to this, Abraham purchased the Cave of Machpelah in Hebron, that's in Genesis chapter 23, as a burial place, and Abraham and several members of his family are buried there, including Isaac, Jacob, Rebekah, and Leah. The only one who's really missing is Rachel, and she's buried up near Bethlehem where she died in childbirth. So it's from those patriarchs and matriarchs that the nation of Israel was birthed. And it's clear to see the anti-Israel bias at the United Nations and its many tentacles. Well, Donald Trump said, and the Trump administration said, hey, you're going to be anti-Israel like that, United Nations and UNESCO? We're pulling out of that. So we did that. Again, Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu watched that happen. And he's getting this wonderful friendship with Donald Trump and the United States. And it's a great relationship. I'm glad we have that relationship. But what am I talking about is the peace deal coming in the near future. Donald Trump's going to be able to look at Netanyahu and say, hey, look at all these different things we did. Now we need you to take this thing across the finish line. Now, that's what looks like is happening. Now, all of this could go away tomorrow. I know that. It's politics, and it's, Netanyahu could just, but we know the United States is going to stand with Israel all the way to the end. And so whether it's Trump's agreement or somebody else, I know that Trump, the international community would look to the United States because we have the most influence over her to bring her to the negotiating table. There may be other people that work with the Arab nations to bring them, which I'm going to get to that in a moment, how Trump's working with them as well. But it could be some other nations that bring the Arab nations in and finally get the Palestinians there. We know a peace agreement's going to get signed. We just don't know who the major players are going to be for sure. But look at this scenario that's taken place. All the different things the United States has done for Israel. We also pulled the United States, the Trump administration, pulled the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, that was huge. The Trump administration has also helpfully delayed the release of Jared Kushner's long-awaited Middle East peace agreement until after the election just a few days ago. The plan has been approved, preemptively denounced by Netanyahu, the right-wing rival Naftali Bennett, who accused the prime minister of working with the Trump administration to create a Palestinian state and divide Jerusalem. And many say that it was better for Netanyahu if the voters didn't see it prior to the election. So the Trump administration said, we're just going to hold off right now till after the elections, then we'll roll it out. I mean, it's like Donald Trump is saying, just tell me what you want and you're going to get it. And which really they've been good decisions. I mean, recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital, moving the embassy there, those are good things. But Netanyahu is being given a lot, but I believe, and this is speculation on my part, but I don't see it happening without strings attached. I think that Donald Trump is going to say, look at all we've done. Now I need your help with this peace agreement. Now, on March 20, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was in Israel, where he pledged the U.S. support for Israel against Iran. Well, that's huge right now because Iran's trying to take over the Middle East and destroy it. They want to drive Israel off into the sea. And when you've got the most powerful military force on the planet on your side and saying, we're committed to you, well, that's pretty nice. And so that's what's happening here. Trump has also labeled Iran's Revolutionary Guard a terror group. And sources speculate that Netanyahu asked him to do that, and he said, sure. So he did it. And they are a terror group. And then just before the election, 2 days ago, there was a massive Trump-Netanyahu billboard in Jerusalem. I mean, like the size of a building. Trump and Netanyahu standing there shaking hands. And on March 25th, President Trump, he signed a proclamation recognizing Israel authority over the long-disputed Golan Heights. Many of you know about that. A valuable political gift to Netanyahu 2 weeks before a hard-fought election in Israel, which, of course, Netanyahu won. So Netanyahu's watching all this, and he's saying, man, I'm pretty much getting all I want, just about. But you know, in the back of his mind, he's wondering, what am I going to have to give back? I mean, this is politics, give and take. You do this favor for me, I'll do this favor for you. Netanyahu is a politician, I promise you. He's on his 5th term right now. And he's sitting back wondering, man, the President of the United States doing look at all he's done in 2 years. And he's wondering, what am I going to have to give back? The Trump administration also, that they're pushing for the Sunni monarchies around Israel to more openly support Israel in their interest. And I mean, this is something that it's unprecedented for Netanyahu. And he's watching this and thinking, man, this is awesome. But I guarantee you in the back of his mind, he's wondering, what am I going to have to give back? Now, again, I know I'm coming up to the next break here, so I don't want to kind of cut this next thing in half that I'm going to go over. But you understand the gravity of the situation here. If this peace agreement was to get signed, it would start the final 7 years. Let me ask you a question. If we were to get a peace agreement signed that was the peace agreement, we knew it was, it had all the characteristics of the peace agreement that starts the final 7 years, what will you do? You say, well, I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to keep rolling along and just, come what may. Well, that's not scriptural. Scripturally, those that consider themselves Christians have a mandate. We have a commission by God to do something in the end time. And that's to disciple people, make Christians, convert people that don't know Jesus Christ. How can you do that? You've got to educate yourself. You've got to know the truth. There'll be many things in the near future that try to sweep you up into world religious systems, world government. If you don't know the truth, you could sign on to stuff that you should not do and could be of eternal consequence. You say, well, you're trying to sensationalize stuff. No, I'm not sensationalizing anything. This is all Bible. There will be people that try to coerce you to be part of this world religious system. You've got to know your Bible, everybody. And that's how you can convert individuals, other people. Know your Bible, go out, get people, disciple them, and get them to go out and get people. It's called building the kingdom of God. And very, very important, because if this peace agreement is signed over the next year or two, we start the final 7 years, we're all facing a rapture. We're all facing the second coming of Jesus Christ. And you want to be on the right side of that when it happens.
Many Christians admit end-time Bible prophecy is very complex and difficult to understand, and for some, a little bit scary. But what if you could understand Bible prophecy? What if you could know what will happen and how the United States will play a key role during end-time events? When you call today and get Understanding the End Time DVD curriculum, you can have peace about what is to come while understanding the prophetic events that appear in our headlines every day. When you call or go online to endtime.com and order, you'll learn the answer to the biggest prophecy question of all. Will the rapture take place, and when will it happen? This 14-part DVD series is the definitive end-time prophecy Bible study available. And for this limited time, you can get it for just $149. Don't miss this special offer. Understanding the End Time. Call now. 1-800-363-8463. That's 1-800-END-TIME. Or go to endtime.com today.
So, on top of everything else we've done for Israel, we've given them millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. We've been very generous for the reinforcement of the U.S. aid for their Israeli military. And so this is another promise that we've given Trump, or that Trump has given Israel. Now, we've supported them. Many administrations have supported them over the years. But Donald Trump has given them just millions and millions and millions of dollars to help them, and we've supported them and in every way possible. So we've given him so much. And again, like I'm saying, with all these strings attached, Netanyahu's got to be thinking, man, this is coming up. I'm going to probably have to give something in return. And he knows, I think, he's saying, man, this peace deal's coming, and I'm going to have to really maybe compromise some stuff here. So after it was determined, moving on, that Netanyahu won the election, Trump told reporters at the White House, he said, everybody said you can't have the peace in the Middle East with Israel and the Palestinians. He said, but I think we have a chance, and I think we have now a better chance with Netanyahu having won the election. And he knows why, because look at everything he's done. Like I said, over the last 2 years, I didn't cover everything that he's done, but the big points, I got that. But look at all he's done. And he's looking at Netanyahu saying, look, I've done a lot for you. I need you to help me with this peace agreement. And White House National Security Advisor John Bolton said yesterday that the administration will put out its plan in the very near future. And he also said that opens up all kinds of prospects, because then the struggle against Iran's efforts, the election of Israel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he said then the struggle against Iran's efforts to subvert peace and security in the region continues. And he said, and Netanyahu will play a big, big part in that, along with President Trump. So President Trump is looking at the peace agreement. He said, now, hey, with Netanyahu reelected, we have a very, very good shot, because some of the other people that were running in the elections in Israel, they wanted nothing to do with Trump's agreement. But Netanyahu has said, hey, everybody, let's just see what it says before axing it. And so Donald Trump, I would bet my truck that Donald Trump and Jared Kushner, Jason Greenblatt, that they went over at least certain sections of this peace agreement with Netanyahu. And he knows, and Donald Trump and them, they know how far he's willing to go on some of this stuff. And so Netanyahu, with Donald Trump, was hoping he'd get reelected. That's why he was helping him so much. I mean, recognizing the Golan Heights just before the election, I mean, if he didn't want Netanyahu to get reelected, he could have waited to do that until after the election. But he wanted Netanyahu to get reelected, and now he says, I think we've got a really, really good chance of getting this peace agreement signed. Do you see what's going on here if you big picture it? Donald Trump has some pull, a lot of leverage points with Netanyahu, and Donald Trump wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. He knows how to get things done, and you say, well, he hasn't got the wall on the southern border. Well, he's not done yet. And so we're watching this stuff come to pass. This is the ongoing fulfillment of Bible prophecy, everybody. Donald Trump's got more of a shot than anybody else that's ever tried it. And so watching it come to pass right now. Now, beyond that, and the peace agreement's one thing, and all of these different things that Netanyahu, or that Donald Trump has done for Netanyahu, those will be huge leveraging factors. But there's also the Arab nations, this regional agreement that Donald Trump has been working on beyond just with Israel, because he knew that I could get Israel to the negotiating table, and if the Palestinians or none of the Arabs wanted to play ball, this thing's going to fall on its face. So when he started off, if you recognize what happened when he first got elected, his first trip overseas was Saudi Arabia. He didn't go to Israel. He went to Saudi Arabia, then to Israel, because he knew, if I'm going to get this thing done, I've got to get these Arab neighbors on board. And so what has happened lately? Well, the Jerusalem Post reports that an Arab NATO is in the making. You say NATO, what? That's European. NATO? The North Atlantic Treaty Organization? Well, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, was formed in April 4th, 1949. Now, this is Europe. And its purpose was to protect Western European nations against the spread of communism over time into the European nations in different places. It was a military force. And NATO has emerged now, though, as the military arm of the United Nations. And this is the one that Donald Trump has been railing and saying, hey, all you nations, Germany and you other nations, you're not paying your fair share. We've basically been the police of all of this, and we've been funding most of it. And so Donald Trump railed on them. He rebuked NATO when he went over there. And he said, you guys are going to start paying your fair share. Well, now the Trump administration is influential in creating a Middle East NATO, if you will. So what's going on? Well, in preparations for the launch of this, and what it's called is the Middle East Strategic Alliance, or MESA. And a lot of people are calling it, it's become known as the Arab NATO, or a coalition of nations that would get together, and their goal is to fend off Iran. That's what this is all about. Saudi Arabia has revealed, and get this, an Arab-American meeting, including Qatar, that was held in the kingdom on April 8th. So today's what, the 11th? So 3 days ago. And the meeting was held with the high-level participation of, now listen at these nations, because I'll tell you something in a minute that correlates with this. The participation of Saudi Arabia and the United States. So the United States is working with them to create a Middle East NATO. The United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, and Jordan. According to the Saudi WAS news agency, the meeting was an important step to launching the alliance, which aims to strengthen the security and stability of the region and the world. Now, here's a point of interest. In February, Jared Kushner, he traveled through the Middle East. You remember when he went to Warsaw, Poland? Then he went down, he traveled to Middle East nations to garner support for his peace deal. Well, guess which nations he visited? You guessed it, Oman, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. The same nations that are trying to form NATO. This Arab NATO, the Mesa coalition. Now, so isn't that interesting that he went to the same nations? They're working with this people. He was getting them on board with this peace agreement. And remember, they've said that behind closed doors, these people are much more willing to negotiate than they are in the open on the news. So the things we're getting reported here in the United States, it may be a little different if you got them guys over a cup of coffee in a back room somewhere. Now, Soleiman Akali, he's a Saudi political analyst. He explained that Iran is taking advantage of its culture and religious links to the Arab world to expand there and destroy it. So you understand the difference between the Sunni Arab states and Iran, which is Shia. They butt heads. Even though they're both Arabs, one is Sunni, which would be Saudi Arabia and all these different Arab nations that I just mentioned. Iran is Shia. So they are diametrically opposed to each other. And so Saudi Arabia knows that they could never conquer Iran in a war. They need this coalition of nations to come against, including the United States and Israel. Very, very important. Because it's all going to play into when we come to this peace deal. Now, since last year, the American administration has been exploring the creation of this new security body comprising the Sunni Middle East countries that would be gearing toward countering the Shiite Iran's regional adventurism, trying to take over. You see what they're doing. Iran is up in Syria and Lebanon, all trying to surround Israel. And reportedly, this Mesa, this Arab NATO member states, they seek deeper cooperation in the realms of missile defense, military training, counterterrorism, while strengthening broader political and economic ties. Now, the same analyst said that it would serve as a bulwark against Iranian aggression, terrorism, extremism, and will bring stability. Over the past year, American officials, including President Trump's advisor Jared Kushner and his international negotiator, his longtime lawyer Jason Greenblatt, they've conducted shuttle diplomacy among Middle East capitals, and several analysts, so they've been talking about this and the peace agreement. They're tying it all in together. And several analysts who spoke to the media line confirmed the visits that laid the foundation for Mesa, although the notion reportedly was first raised by Saudi Arabia. But regarding Israel, now here's what all ties in. Its relations with regional Muslim nations are by most accounts improving. Primarily the result of shared interest in curbing Iran's potential nuclearization. So they all have a common ground here, Israel and these Arab nations. However, the conflict with Palestinians remains a major, if not insurmountable, obstacle to the establishment of full diplomatic ties between Israel and its neighbors. So here's the scenario. Saudi Arabia and all these different nations, they need military help against Iran. Who's been negotiating with them? The Americans. The Americans, they know they need America and they need Israel to help protect them from Iran. So get this. Now a peace agreement is fixing to be rolled out just over the next, it could be weeks or it could be a month or two. They're going to get a peace agreement doled out. Donald Trump is sitting back here saying, okay, all you Arab states, you need help with protection. We're talking about this Arab NATO situation, this military alliance, but you need America and you need Israel. So what we need you to do, what's the big factor, the wrench in the transmission? The Palestinians. So what we need you to do is to bring them to the table and you get them to sign this peace agreement. Look at all the things that we have done for Israel. We'll bring Israel to the table. You bring the Palestinians to the table, and we'll sign this peace agreement, and we'll all be able to play ball. We'll be able to work with you and protect you against Iran, and you can work with us, bring the Palestinians to the table, and keep them in line after we get this peace agreement signed. Get them to sign it, get them to play ball, and we'll all be able to get along. Now, that is one scenario how this whole thing could play out. If you watch the news, read the articles, follow this stuff, you can see how it's all coming down. And you say, well, maybe this could blow up and none of it happened. That's absolutely possible. But this stuff is unprecedented. This stuff hasn't happened during previous administrations. So it could well likely be the peace agreement that starts the final 7 years. Time will tell.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of Endtime Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with Endtime Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.